Welcome back. I'm Dr. Cheek and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how do we intake or how do we view and attend to certain types of information. Now, to begin with, do you ever wonder why you sometimes maybe ruminate or pay more attention to negative comments you receive from anyone, and those thoughts just continue to run through your mind about what the negative comments were, how you could maybe change what they were, how you could change the person's mind about how they feel about you, and anything of that nature? Like that negative comment tends to stick with you for a really long time. Or are you the type of person who, when you're looking to buy a new product, when you're looking to take on a new service, instead of looking at the positive reviews, you tend to go to the negative reviews, and you tend to focus or give a little bit more value to those negative reviews? If you do find that this is the case for you, it may be due to negativity bias. And negativity bias is simply our tendency to focus on, to learn from, and to use more readily negative information than positive or neutral information. Now, we may sometimes overvalue or sometimes equate negativity for honesty or truth. We may tend to give negative information more validity. So how this may look in real life is you may be more prone to focus on primarily one mistake or misunderstanding or mishap your loved one may do, as opposed to the other things that they've done that's either neutral or positive. You may focus or change how you behave towards this person based off of that one negative interaction. Or in a work situation, you may focus or give more attention to a negative component of your evaluation. So if your supervisor or your manager gives you an evaluation, if 1 out of the 10 components that they're evaluating you on is negative in some way or negative leaning, you will probably focus primarily on that one negative issue and kind of overlook or be dismissive of those other 9, or chalk those other 9 up to that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Or in other situations, you may be more likely to write a review for a product or a service or a business when you've had one negative experience after having maybe 10, 15 positive experiences and never considered writing a positive review. Or you may tend to look to individuals who have an ability to be what we consider brutally honest. And brutally honest typically means that someone's saying a truth in a somewhat hurtful or rude way. Now, it may not be true what they're saying, but it's their truth, and it may be solely based off their opinion. But we sometimes gravitate to those who are brutally honest. We may sometimes erroneously believe that someone being negative, someone being rude, or being hurtful in some way is somehow more truthful. Now, why do we do this? Some researchers theorize that we do this for evolutionary purposes, survival of the fittest. We learn more information about what we need to survive from negative information than we do from positive or neutral information. Let's say, for instance, if I were to tell you that if you were bitten by a rattlesnake, you have 4 hours to receive the antivenom before you die. Side note, I have not done any research on that statement. I don't know how truthful that statement is, but I do know that rattlesnake venom is poisonous and can kill you. I do not know the time frame of that need for antivenom, just as a side note. Now, would you put more value or stock in that information, or would you put more value and stock in me telling you that a recent study showed that snakes have maternal instincts towards their offsprings? I imagine that first one would feel or seem more valuable to you, and you may hold on to that information, even though I explicitly said I did not look that information up. Me just knowing that a rattlesnake is venomous, and you knowing as well, to some extent, a rattlesnake is venomous, it may seem plausible that you need to get antivenom in 4 hours. You may hold on to that messaging, although I've explicitly said, I did not research that. I don't know if that's actually factual. I do know you need antivenom, don't know the time frame. So that's what it means for us to have a negative bias. And how would I make that statement more neutral or positive? It may sound like semantics, but it sometimes matters, is that we may be able to say then, please make sure you report to your nearest emergency room or urgent care within 4 hours to make sure you receive the necessary antivenom. It's giving you the same information, but one is telling you you are in imminent harm of dying, and the other one is just giving you the information you need to survive a rattlesnake bite. So that's how we can frame things negatively, or we can frame things neutrally or positively. And the framing sometimes matter. The framing matters because in this day and age of an influx of information and not everyone always being factual or truthful with their information, it's helpful for us to push back on that and start to do some research and some understanding for ourselves, even when the message sounds like something that can be helpful for us. So how do you start to challenge that? How do you start to change that? What can we do differently? First thing you can do is like any other things that we find challenging that we have to learn how to adjust to or make changes to, we have to become aware of it. So you have to become aware of when you are only looking at the breaking news of the day and not looking at those feel-good stories. If you're only focusing on negative reviews and don't actually take into consideration that the positive reviews may not all be bought, take some time to kind of think about, am I only highlighting when someone makes a minor mistake, when they've engaged in other positive behavior towards me? And if you're able to start to be aware of that, I am constantly ingesting negative messaging throughout the day. Start to maybe push back on some of the messaging that you're receiving. Start to allow yourself the space to investigate and not necessarily give so much value or credence to that negative information. Although it may be valuable, be willing to allow yourself to have those moments, to listen to those feel-good stories, to identify when your partner has done something wrong, but also highlight the things that they've done right. Be willing to say to yourself when your manager criticizes you, it's not the end of the world. I'm not a horrible person. This is an area for me to grow, but I've done well in all these other areas. Pay attention to those things. Pay attention to when you are highlighting the negativity around you. And also check within yourself your ability to believe someone simply because they have the ability to put a negative slant on information. So be willing to push back, to challenge yourself to say, am I believing this because of where it's coming from? Am I believing it because of the negative frame or the negative slant that the information is taken? Or am I believing this because this information is actually factual and true and can help me in some way? Those are the questions to ask yourself when you're taking in, or you feel like you are taking in, a whole host of negative information or negative framing of information. So what I hope you learn from today is that negativity bias is a thing, and we do tend to learn from or focus on or want to pay more attention to negative information because it may have the potential to save us in the future. Makes sense. But we also have to be aware of when we're creating this false narrative within ourselves that negative information always equals truth, because that is not truthful. Be willing to be aware of that in yourself and know when you need to challenge that, or challenge those messages, or challenge those situations. As always, please feel free to jot down any questions, comments, or thoughts you have below. I hope you've learned something from today's video. I thank you for taking the time to listen, and I'll be seeing you again very soon. Thank you.